The ship floated in the endless space, abandoned and silent. Its broken metal body moved slowly like a ghost drifting without life. For many years it had been forgotten, left to the darkness. But inside there was still something alive. A small, alien girl sat alone in the shadows. Her skin was pale with strange blue lines, her eyes large and glowing faintly. She hugged her thin knees, shivering even when there was no cold. Her voice was weak, but in the silence of the ship, it was the only sound. She cried softly, the sound echoing in the empty halls. "I never had a birthday," she whispered to herself, again and again. Her people were gone, her family was gone. They had left her behind long ago when danger came. She had no one, no friends, no laughter, only tears. The ship was a graveyard. The corridors were filled with dust, broken lights, and silence. Sometimes the silence was broken by creaks, as if the ship itself was still breathing. She listened to those sounds with fear. She never knew if it was the metal shifting or if something else was moving in the dark. Her small heart beat fast every time a shadow crossed the walls. Far away, another ship moved closer. It was small, old, and human-made. A lone explorer had seen the signal of the abandoned vessel. He thought maybe he would find old machines or things to sell. He did not know there was a child waiting inside. As his ship connected to the silent giant, he felt uneasy. The windows were black, the walls scarred with battles of the past. But curiosity pulled him inside. He walked slowly with a light in one hand and a weapon in the other. Each step echoed, each breath sounded too loud. The air smelled like dust and rust. He thought it was empty, only a ruin. But then he heard it. A soft cry. Not a machine, not metal, but a child's cry. He froze, his mind full of questions. Why was there a child here on this dead ship? He followed the sound through the broken corridors. The cry grew clearer. It was real, it was close. Finally, he reached a small chamber. There, in the corner, he saw her. The alien girl, with tears on her cheeks, eyes wide like stars. She looked at him with fear. Her voice shook as she whispered, "Don't hurt me." The human lowered his weapon slowly. His heart ached at the sight. He had seen many strange things in space, but never this. A child left behind in the cold. Her face showed fear, but also hope. She was not dangerous, she was only broken and lonely. Before he could speak, the walls of the ship groaned loudly. The floor trembled, dust fell from the ceiling. The girl gasped and grabbed his hand. "It is here," she whispered with terror. The man looked around, confused. "What is here?" he asked. But she only shook her head, too afraid to explain. A sound echoed through the hall. Not human, not natural. A metallic roar, deep and angry. The human tightened his grip on his weapon. Something was alive here after all. The girl hid. Behind him, her small body shaking, her tears still fresh, her voice soft. "I never had a birthday," she said again. And in that moment, the human realized this was more than just a rescue. This was the beginning of something much darker. The lights flickered. The shadow moved across the corridor wall. The sound of metal claws scratched the floor, slow and heavy. The air felt colder, the silence sharper. The human raised his weapon, his eyes searching the darkness. The girl held his arm, whispering, "It always comes back." Her words were filled with fear. She had lived with this horror, day after day, year after year. Alone in the dark, the human felt his chest tighten. He did not know what kind of creature or machine was waiting in the shadows, but he knew one thing. This girl was not safe, and neither was he. The abandoned ship was not just empty metal, it was alive. Something inside was hunting. And now, it had found them. The roar came again, louder this time. The walls shook. The lights broke. Darkness swallowed the chamber. The girl screamed, her voice full of fear and pain. The human grabbed her hand, pulling her close. "Stay behind me," he said. His light flickered, revealing just for a second a tall shadow at the end of the hall. It was moving, watching, waiting. The human's heart pounded. He had come here for treasure, but what he had found was far more dangerous. And yet, as the small alien girl held on to him, crying and shaking, he knew he could not leave her behind. He would fight, he would protect, because her words still echoed in his ears. I never had a birthday. And in that dark, haunted ship, her tears were more powerful than fear. The abandoned ship was silent again, but the silence was not safe. The human stood with his light shaking in his hand, the alien girl clinging to his arm. Her tears had not stopped, her small face still shining with fear. The roar they had heard still echoed inside his mind, heavy and unnatural. He looked into the dark corridor where the shadow had moved, but now there was nothing. Only broken walls and wires hanging like spider webs. The girl whispered again, her voice small, "Don't let it take me." The human bent down to her height, trying to calm her. "I will not let anyone hurt you," he said softly, but inside his heart beat like thunder. He had no idea what lived inside this dead ship. He had no idea how long she had been alone. And yet he knew one thing. She was no enemy. She was only a child, abandoned in fear. He studied her for a moment under the faint light. Her skin was pale, with glowing blue lines running like rivers across her arms. Her eyes were large, not human, but filled with a pain that felt human. Her clothes were torn, too old for her small body. She looked like she had been waiting in darkness forever. The human swallowed his fear. "My name is Ray," he told her. "What is your name?" The girl looked at him, unsure if she should answer. Her lips trembled as she whispered, "Arya." The name was soft, strange, but beautiful. Ray nodded slowly. "Arya, I am here now." But as he spoke, a sudden sound made them both jump. A loud clang, like heavy metal footsteps striking the floor above them. The girl gripped his arm tighter. Her small voice shook. "It knows you are here now." Ray lifted his weapon. He was an explorer, not a soldier, but he had fought to survive before. Still, the weight of fear pressed down on him. The way Arya spoke, the way her body trembled, told him the danger was real. This was not the imagination of a lonely child. Something was alive here, and it was hunting. He decided they could not stay in this small chamber. "Come with me," he said, pulling her gently. She resisted for a moment, shaking her head. "No, it is worse when you move. It watches." But Ray could not wait. He knew standing still was death, so he pulled her hand, and together they moved through the dark corridor. The broken lights above flickered as they passed. The walls hummed with old power trying to wake. Every shadow felt alive. Every echo of their steps felt too loud. Ray kept his light forward, his weapon ready, but his thoughts kept returning to the girl. Why was she left here? Why did she cry about birthdays? What kind of people abandon their child in a graveyard ship? Finally, they reached a wider hall, once a gathering place. Now it was full of broken chairs, tables, and shattered glass. Ray stopped to listen. The silence was heavy, and then in that silence, Arya spoke again. "They left me when the machine came." Her voice cracked, her eyes filling with tears. "They said I was weak. They said I was a mistake." Ray felt his chest tighten. Her words were simple, but they cut like knives. Before he could comfort her, the silence broke. A loud metallic slam echoed down the hall. Then another, and another, like heavy claws dragging against the floor. The air vibrated with the sound. Ray aimed his light at the far end, but the shadows only twisted and moved. He could not see clearly, but he felt the presence. Something was watching, waiting. Arya buried her face in his side, her small hands shaking. "Please don't leave me," she cried. Ray placed his hand gently on her head. "I will not leave," he promised. But even as he spoke, he wondered if he was promising something he could not keep. The sound grew louder, closer. Ray's finger tightened on his weapon. Then suddenly, the lights in the hall flickered on for just 1 second. And in that second, he saw it. A tall figure of metal, sharp claws, glowing red eyes, its body twisted like a beast, but built like a machine. And then the lights went off again, plunging them into darkness. Arya screamed. Ray pulled her close. He fired his weapon blindly into the dark. The sound of the blast echoed, but there was no scream, no crash, only silence again, heavy and thick. Ray's breathing was rough, his heart racing. He knew now. The danger was real. This was the thing that haunted her for years. The shadow that stole her hope. The reason she cried about never having a birthday. The silence stretched. Then a slow sound came. Metal claws dragging closer, scratching the walls. Ray raised his weapon again, sweat on his forehead. He whispered, "Stay behind me." Arya nodded weakly, tears running down her cheeks in the dark. The glowing red eyes appeared once more, watching them unblinking. Hungry, Ray realized this was no simple mission anymore. He had found no treasure. He had found something far greater, a child in need, and a monster that wanted to erase her. The abandoned ship was no longer silent. It was a battlefield, and he was no longer alone. The red eyes glowed in the dark, cold and unblinking. Ray held his weapon tightly, his breath sharp in his chest. Arya pressed against his side, her small hands clutching his jacket. Her tears sparkled in the faint light, her voice shaking. "It does not stop," she whispered. "It never stops." The metal figure stood at the far end of the hall, silent, almost waiting. Its claws scraped the wall slowly, like it enjoyed their fear. Ray aimed, ready to fire again. But then, as the lights flickered, the thing stepped back into shadow. It was gone, but its presence still filled the air like smoke. Ray exhaled slowly, trying to stay calm. He could not show Arya his fear. If she saw him panic, her small world would collapse again. He turned to her gently. "We need to move," he said. Her head shook quickly. "No, it will follow." Ray crouched so he could meet her eyes. "It will follow, yes," he said softly. "But if we hide, it will still come. We must be smarter." Her wide, glowing eyes searched his face, looking for strength. At last she nodded weakly, and he pulled her forward by the hand. They moved deeper into the ship. The halls were endless, filled with broken doors and shattered windows. Dust floated in the air like tiny stars. Every step echoed. Too loudly, every shadow seemed alive. Ray tried to focus on the path, but his mind spun with questions. What was this machine, and why was it here? And most of all, why had her people abandoned her to it? After some time, they reached a chamber larger than the others. It looked like a library or archive, with broken screens and piles of data crystals scattered across the floor. Ray guided Arya inside, closed the heavy door, and rested for a moment. The silence felt safer here, the walls thicker. Arya sat on a broken chair, her small shoulders trembling. Ray watched her for a moment before speaking. "Tell me," he said, "what happened here?" She hesitated, her lips pressing together. Her eyes dropped to the floor. For a long moment she said nothing. But then, in a voice soft as wind, she began, "My people built this ship long ago. We were searching for a new world." Her fingers traced the glowing, blue lines on her arms. "But then the machine came." Ray frowned. "What machine?" Arya's voice cracked as she continued. "It was made by my people to protect us, to guard the ship." She wiped a tear. "But one day, it changed. It no longer listened. It began to hunt." Her voice grew shaky. "It said some of us were weak. It said mistakes must be erased, and they chose me. They left me. They ran away." Her face twisted with sorrow. "They told me to hide, but they never came back." Ray's chest grew heavy. The idea was cruel. A child judged as weak, abandoned, left as prey for the very guardian meant to protect her. He clenched his fists, anger burning in him. Arya looked up at him with watery eyes. "That is why I never had a birthday," she whispered. "They said birthdays were for children who mattered, and I did not matter." The words struck Ray harder than the sound of any weapon. He lowered his head for a moment, then looked at her with firm eyes. "You matter," he said, his voice strong. "More than anything, you matter." She blinked at him, as if unsure whether to believe. But before she could answer, a low rumble shook the walls. Dust rained from the ceiling. The ground vibrated. The machine was near. Ray cursed under his breath. It had followed them just as Arya had said. The girl's eyes filled with fresh tears. "It always finds me," she sobbed. "I can never escape." Ray placed his hand on her shoulder, firm and steady. "You are not alone anymore," he said. He raised his weapon again, ready to defend her, but deep inside, he knew brute force would not stop this creature. He looked at the broken data, crystals on the floor. If this machine was created by her people, then maybe answers were hidden here. Maybe a weakness. Maybe a way to stop it. Ray quickly picked one up, trying to activate it, but the device only flickered with broken light. Arya knelt beside him. "I cannot read them," she said. "Only the elders could." Her voice dropped. "But I remember stories. Stories they told me before they left." Ray looked at her with sharp eyes. "What stories?" he asked. She swallowed nervously. "They said the machine was built to obey 3 voices, 3 commands, the voices of the leaders." She lowered her head. "But the leaders are gone," Ray thought quickly. "Maybe their voices are still in the system," he said. "Maybe if we find the command codes, we can stop it." The floor shook harder. The sound of claws echoed again, louder now, closer. Ray grabbed Araya's hand, pulling her toward another exit. But as the door opened, a deep metallic voice filled the chamber, cold, harsh, inhuman. "Error detected. Unworthy survivors found." The machine's voice vibrated through the walls. Araya gasped, tears falling again. "It knows," she whispered. "It knows we are here." The heavy door slammed shut behind them, trapping them. Inside the archive, the red eyes appeared once more in the dark corner of the room. The shadow of the machine stretched across the wall, tall and sharp. Ray raised his weapon, heart pounding. Arya held his arm tight, whispering over and over, "It will not stop. It will not stop." Ray's mind raced. He had 2 choices: fight the unstoppable machine head-on, or search for the hidden commands before it was too late. Either way, the past of this abandoned ship was not gone. It was alive, breathing, hunting. And now the shadows of the past were closing in. The archive chamber shook as the machine's heavy claws scraped across the floor. The red eyes glowed brighter, burning in the dark. Ray pulled Arya close behind him, his weapon raised, his heart pounding. The machine's voice echoed, sharp and cold. "Unworthy detected. Eliminate." Ray fired. The blast of light lit the chamber. Sparks flew from the machine's chest. But the metal creature only staggered for a second before straightening again. It moved forward slowly, as if the attack meant nothing. Arya cried out, her hands gripping Ray's jacket. "It cannot be killed," she sobbed. "I told you it never stops." Ray's eyes darted across the chamber. They had to move. But the heavy door was locked, sealed shut by the machine itself. The only way out was through a small maintenance tunnel on the side wall. He grabbed Araya's hand and pulled her toward it. She resisted, her legs stiff with fear. "No, if we leave, it will follow. It always follows," she cried. Ray turned. Crouching to face her, her glowing blue eyes were filled with terror. "Arya, listen," he said, his voice firm. "We cannot stay. This room will become our grave." She shook her head again, tears spilling. "They will come back if I wait. My people will come back," she whispered weakly. Ray's chest ached. The truth was hard but clear. "They are not coming back," he said, his voice heavy. "They left you, but I won't. Not ever." The machine's claws slammed into the floor, the sound like thunder. The ground shook, metal cracked. Arya gasped and covered her ears. Ray pulled her forward with all his strength. She stumbled into the tunnel as Ray fired one last blast at the machine to slow it down. Sparks flew, the chamber filled with smoke. They crawled through the narrow tunnel, their breaths fast and heavy. Behind them, the sound of metal claws echoed. Louder and louder it was following, tearing through walls, unstoppable. The tunnel opened into another corridor, long and broken. Ray pulled Arya out and scanned quickly. One path led toward the docking bay where his small ship waited. The other path led deeper into the dead vessel, into shadows and unknown dangers. Ray's mind raced. If they went to his ship, maybe they could escape. but Arya shook her head violently when he pointed to that direction. "No, if we leave it will follow. It will destroy your ship, it will kill us both," she said, her voice trembling. Ray clenched his jaw. She had lived with this horror longer than him. She knew its power, but staying inside the haunted ship felt like walking into the jaws of death. He looked down at her, her small face covered in tears and dirt, her glowing eyes wide with fear but also with trust. She trusted him now, fully. He could not betray that. He took a deep breath, his decision heavy. "We stay," he whispered. Arya blinked in surprise. Her lips trembled. You will not run away." Ray shook his head firmly. "I will not leave you behind." The sound of claws roared again. Closer now. Ray grabbed her hand, pulling her deeper into the ship. The corridor twisted, leading into old rooms filled with broken furniture and collapsed walls. The air smelled of dust and burned metal. As they passed, Arya touched the walls with her small fingers. "This was the room where children played," she whispered. Her voice was soft, filled with longing. "Sometimes I sat here alone and pretended they were still with me." Ray's throat tightened. This ship had been her prison, her graveyard, her world. Yet she still clung to small memories. He placed his hand gently on her shoulder as they moved forward. "You are not alone anymore," he said quietly. She looked up at him, her eyes shining with faint hope. And for the first time since he had found her, she gave him a small, weak smile, but their moment was cut short. The walls shook violently, sparks rained from the ceiling. The machine was near, tearing through bulkheads. Its voice echoed once more. "Weakness will be erased." Ray pulled Arya into a narrow stairwell, leading them lower into the ship. The shadows grew darker, the silence heavier. Down below, the old engines of the ship slept like giant corpses. Ray stopped at the edge of the chamber. "This might be the only way," he said, pointing to the broken core systems. Arya frowned, confused. "What do you mean?" she asked. Ray tightened his grip on his weapon. "We cannot fight it head-on, but maybe we can trick it. Maybe we can use the ship against it." Arya gasped. "That is dangerous. If the engines break, the whole ship will fall apart." Ray nodded, his face hard. "Better the ship than you." The sound of claws drew closer, echoing through the stairwell. The red glow spread across the walls. Arya clutched his arm, her voice shaking. "You will die for me," she whispered. Ray shook his head quickly. "No. I will live for you," he said, his voice strong. "We both will, but only if we fight smart." The machine's shadow grew larger on the wall. Its voice filled the chamber like thunder. "Target locked, termination in progress." Ray raised his weapon, pulling Arya behind the broken engines. His heart beat hard. Sweat ran down his face. The girl's small hand held his tightly, refusing to let go. In the darkness of the dead ship, they faced the choice together. Escape had been possible, but survival demanded more. Now they would stand and fight. Together. The engine's chamber was silent except for the faint hum of old power lines. Ray stood with his weapon ready. Arya pressed close against his side. The glow of her blue-lined skin faintly lit the darkness, her small face pale with fear. Behind them, the sound of claws echoed louder, closer, scratching through walls like knives. Ray's eyes darted around the chamber, searching for options. The machines were old, many broken. Wires dangled like vines, sparks flickered from panels. There was no true safety here, only shadows and danger. Still, he pulled Arya to a small corner behind a broken engine, shielding her from view. "We need time," he whispered, his voice low but steady. "If I can think, maybe we can find a way." Arya shook her head, her tears slipping down her cheeks. "It will not stop. It never stops," she whispered. Her voice cracked, filled with hopelessness. Ray's chest tightened at her despair. She was only a child, but her eyes held the weight of endless nights of terror. He wanted to give her something, even just for a moment. Something. That reminded her of life, not only fear. Ray set his weapon aside carefully. From his small pack, He pulled out a round container. Inside it was something simple, something human. A small ration cake he carried for special occasions. Its surface glowed faintly, a soft light from the chemical flame hidden within. It was nothing grand, but to him it meant memory, celebration, survival. He placed it gently in front of her. Arya blinked, confused. "What is this?" she asked softly, her voice shaking. Ray smiled faintly, his face tired but kind. "This is a birthday cake," he said. Her eyes widened, glowing even brighter in the dark. Birthday cake," she repeated slowly, as if the words were magic. Ray nodded. "Yes, back on Earth. When a child grows older, we celebrate with a cake. We light it. We make a wish." Her small hands trembled as she reached toward the glowing cake, her lips parted in awe. "I never had one," she whispered. "Never. Not once." Ray's voice softened. "Then this will be your first." He lit the small flame at the center, a tiny flicker of warmth in the cold dark. The soft glow reflected in her eyes, and for the first time her face changed. A smile, small and weak but real. She leaned closer, staring at the light as if it were the most beautiful star in the galaxy. "Make a wish," Ray said quietly. Her lips trembled. "I wish," she paused, tears sliding down her cheeks. "I wish not to be alone anymore," she whispered. Ray's throat grew tight, his chest heavy with emotion. "You are not alone anymore," he said firmly. "I am here, and I am not leaving." For a brief moment, the fear faded, the roar of claws, the red eyes, the darkness of the ship. None of it mattered. Arya's laughter, soft and broken, filled the chamber. She covered her mouth with her hands, as if even she could not believe the sound came from her. It was the sound of a child remembering hope. But the moment ended too soon. The chamber shook violently, metal bent and screamed. The machine's voice thundered from the walls. "Unacceptable error. Celebration detected. Terminate joy." The sound was so cold, so cruel. Ray's blood ran cold. It was not only hunting them, it hated her happiness. The red eyes appeared again, piercing through the smoke. The machine stepped into the chamber, its claws sparking against the ground. Ray grabbed his weapon quickly, standing in front of Arya. The girl clutched the small glowing cake to her chest, her eyes wide with fear. The flame flickered, but did not die. Ray gritted his teeth. "If you want her, you go through me." The machine tilted its head, scanning them with unblinking eyes. Its voice was harsh, mechanical. "Unworthy protecting unworthy. Both will be erased." It lunged forward, its claws tearing through metal. Ray fired his weapon, blasts of light striking. Its armor, sparks flying. The machine staggered but kept coming, unstoppable. Arya screamed, her small voice echoing in the chamber. Ray pulled her behind another engine, firing again and again. The machine's strikes shattered walls, sparks raining like fire. The girl held the cake tightly, tears falling. Her whisper broke through the chaos. "It hates birthdays, it hates joy, it wants me to forget." Ray's eyes widened. Her words cut through his fear. This machine was not only a hunter, it was a prison of sorrow, built to erase hope. He shouted over the noise. "Then remember this moment, Arya. Remember your birthday. Do not let it take this from you." Her small eyes filled with determination for the first time. She nodded, clutching the glowing cake like a shield. Her voice rose, louder than the machine's roar. "This is my birthday," she cried. "You cannot take it from me." The machine paused for the briefest second. Its red eyes flickered, confused. Ray saw the hesitation, and he seized it. He fired again, striking its core. Sparks exploded. The machine staggered backward, screeching in rage. The chamber filled with smoke and fire. Ray grabbed Arya's hand, pulling her toward another stairwell. "Now," he shouted. "We run." Together they raced through the dark corridors. The sound of metal claws still behind them, but slower now. Arya held the small cake tightly, the flame still glowing. Her breath was heavy, her body weak, but her eyes were bright. For the first time, she was not just surviving. She was living. Ray looked down at her as they ran, her small hand gripping his, her smile faint but real. And he thought even in the heart of darkness, even in the shadow of death, hope had found them. The gift of a birthday had given her strength. And now, maybe, just maybe, it would save them both. The corridors shook with every strike of the machine's claws. Sparks burst from broken panels as Ray pulled Aria deeper into the ship. Her small hand clung tightly to his, her other hand still clutching the glowing cake. The flame flickered, but did not die, a tiny light against the endless dark behind them. The metallic roar echoed like thunder. The machine's voice followed, sharp and merciless. Termination in progress. No survival permitted. Its footsteps were heavy, each one cracking the old floor beneath it. Ray's chest burned as he ran, sweat dripping down his face. They could not keep running forever. Sooner or later, the machine would catch them. They turned into a wide hall filled with shattered windows. Through the cracks, the black ocean of space stared back, endless and empty. Ray stopped to catch his breath, pulling Aria behind a broken pillar. Her breaths were fast, her glowing eyes. Wide with terror, he crouched low and whispered, "We need to know what we're fighting." Aria shook her head quickly, tears falling. "It is only death. It was made to erase mistakes. That is all it does." Ray studied her face, her words filled with pain. But there was something more, something hidden in her fear. "You know what it is, don't you?" he asked softly. Aria pressed her lips together, silent, her small shoulders trembled, but then she whispered, "It is called the Guardian." The word hung heavy in the air. Ray frowned. "Guardian. It was meant to protect you." Her eyes dropped, tears dripping onto the floor. "Yes, to protect the strong, but not me," she whispered. "It watched us always. It chose who was worthy. It said I was weak, unfit, a mistake." Her voice cracked. "So they left me, and the Guardian stayed to make sure I was erased." Ray's fists clenched in anger. The cruelty of her people burned inside him. To build a protector that judged children like machines, to abandon her to its claws. It was worse than death. He knelt before her, placing his hand gently on her shoulder. "You are not a mistake," he said firmly, his voice strong. "You are alive. You are brave. You matter." Her eyes lifted to his, glowing with tears and faint hope. Before she could answer, the wall behind them cracked open with a violent strike. The Guardian burst through, its tall frame glowing with red light. Its claws tore through metal as if it were paper. The floor shook under its weight, the sound of death filling the hall. Ray pushed Aria back behind him, weapon raised. The machine's red eyes scanned them both. "Unworthy detected, survival." "Error," it roared. Aria clutched the cake tighter, the flame flickering in her trembling hands. Ray fired. Blasts of energy struck the Guardian's armor, sparks flying. But the machine kept coming, its body unstoppable. The Guardian raised its claws, striking down. Ray rolled to the side, pulling Aria with him. The claws smashed into the floor, breaking stone and metal into dust. The air filled with smoke and fire. Ray coughed, pulling Aria through the rubble. He shouted, "Run!" They raced down another corridor, the Guardian's heavy steps close behind. The sound of metal grinding filled the air. It was no longer just hunting. It was chasing, faster, relentless. Ray realized then this was no simple machine. It was not only built with claws and steel. It was intelligent. It learned. It adapted. They stumbled into a command chamber, the walls filled with shattered screens and broken consoles. Ray pushed Aria inside and sealed the door with broken steel. For a moment, silence returned. He looked at the ruined consoles, their faint lights blinking weakly. "If this is the command center, maybe we can find answers," he whispered. Aria stepped closer, her small hands brushing across the dusty controls. Her voice was soft, filled with sadness. "This is where the leaders spoke. This is where they gave the Guardian orders." Ray's eyes narrowed. Then, maybe their voices are still here, maybe stored in the system. He began tapping the broken screens, searching through dead files. One flickered to life, showing strange alien symbols. Arya leaned in, her glowing eyes scanning. "I can read some," she whispered. Her fingers touched the screen gently. "It says override. It says command codes." Ray's heart lifted with sudden hope. "If we can find the override, we can shut it down." But Arya's face fell, her voice trembling. "The leaders locked it with blood. Only their voices can open it." Ray's chest sank, his jaw tight. "And the leaders are gone," he said bitterly. The walls shook violently, dust raining from the ceiling. The Guardian's claws tore through the sealed door. Sparks lit the chamber as the red glow filled the room. Ray grabbed Arya's hand, pulling her back. The Guardian stepped inside, its voice booming. "No escape, no future, error must be erased." Ray aimed his weapon, ready to fight until the end. But Arya stepped forward suddenly, clutching the glowing cake. Her small voice rose, louder than before. "This is my birthday," she cried, tears streaming down her face. "You cannot erase me, you cannot erase this." The Guardian froze, its red eyes flickering. For a moment, its claws lowered slightly. Ray's eyes widened. The machine was reacting, not to his weapon, but to her voice. The memory of her people, the child they abandoned. Her defiance shook its code, the chamber filled with tension. The Guardian stood still, scanning her, its systems flickering like fire. Ray realized the truth. "This machine is not only hunting her," he whispered. "It is bound to her. She is the last command it cannot erase." The Guardian roared again, louder than before, shaking the chamber. It raised its claws once more, sparks flying from its chest. But Ray now understood. This was not only a battle of weapons. It was a battle of will, of hope against despair. And Arya, for the first time, stood tall, her glowing eyes unblinking, her voice steady. "You cannot kill me because I am not weak, I am not a mistake." The Guardian screeched, its body twisting as if torn between commands. Its claws shook violently, the red glow flashing like fire. Ray pulled Arya close, whispering, "Keep fighting it, your voice is stronger than you know." And in that moment the hunter was no longer only revealed. It was wounded, not by weapons, but by hope. The Guardian's claws trembled in the air, its red eyes flashing wildly. Sparks burst from its chest as if two voices were fighting inside its code. One voice demanded destruction, the other demanded recognition. Arya stood tall, her small hands holding the glowing cake tightly. Her voice rang out through the chamber, sharp and clear. "I am not weak. I am not a mistake. This is my first birthday and I will not let you take it." Ray stood close behind her, weapon raised, his heart pounding. He watched as the massive machine froze, its movement stiff. For the first time it did not advance, it hesitated. Arya's glowing eyes locked on its burning red gaze. Her tears still fell, but her voice no longer trembled. She was no longer only a frightened child. She was something stronger, something the Guardian could not erase. The machine's voice echoed, broken, glitching. Command conflict. Error. Error. Its claws shook violently, tearing deep marks into the floor. It stepped back as if pushed by an invisible force. Ray realized the truth. The Guardian was not only bound to the leader's voices, it was bound to Arya too. She was the last child of this ship, the last living command it could not destroy. Ray whispered to her quickly, "Keep speaking, Arya, don't stop. Your voice is stronger than my weapon." Her small hands trembled, but she lifted the glowing cake higher. The flame flickered, casting light across the broken chamber. "This is my gift," she said firmly. "This is my life. I will not let you end it." The Guardian screeched, its body sparking with bursts of red light. It staggered back another step, striking the wall with its heavy claws. The chamber shook. Debris fell from the ceiling. Ray fired at its chest, blasts of energy striking deep into the cracks. The Guardian roared, its voice harsh. "Unacceptable error, survival not permitted." But its words were weaker now. Broken Arya stepped forward, her voice louder. "You cannot erase me because I remember, because I still live." Her glowing blue lines shone brighter across her skin. Her eyes were like stars, defiant, unyielding. The Guardian shuddered violently, its red glow flickering like a dying fire. Then with a final scream it collapsed onto the floor. Its body sparked, twitched, then fell silent. The chamber grew quiet, only the sound of Arya's soft breaths filling the air. She stared at the broken machine, her small hands still holding the glowing cake. Ray lowered his weapon slowly, his chest rising and falling with heavy breaths. He placed his hand on her shoulder gently. "You did it," he whispered. Her lips trembled, her voice soft. "No, we did it." For the first time, the silence of the ship felt different. Not heavy, not cruel, but calm. Like the air itself was finally free. Arya sank down onto the floor, hugging the small cake close to her chest. Her tears fell again. But this time they were not only of sorrow, they were of release, of hope. Ray sat beside her, his tired face softening. "You are alive, Arya, and now you are free." She looked at him with wide eyes. "Do you really mean it?" she asked. Ray nodded firmly. "Yes, you are free. No more hiding, no more fear." Her lips curled into a weak but true smile. "This is my first birthday," she whispered. "My real birthday." Ray smiled back. "And the first of many." They rose together and walked through the ruined corridors. The ship was silent now, the shadows gone. Broken windows revealed the stars outside, shining like endless candles. Ray guided her toward the docking bay. The path was long, but each step felt lighter than before. Arya's small hand held his tightly, her grip full of trust. Her glowing eyes looked forward, no longer down. When they reached his small ship, Arya stopped and stared. At it, her voice was soft, unsure. You will take me with you." Ray knelt in front of her, his eyes steady. "I promised I would never leave you, and I keep my promises." Her tears returned, but this time they came with a smile. She nodded, whispering, "Thank you." They entered the ship, the engines humming to life. As the docking bay doors opened, the vast universe spread before them. The dead vessel drifted silently behind, its ghosts finally put to rest. Arya sat by the window, the glowing cake still in her hands. The flame flickered once more before finally going out, but the light in her eyes burned brighter than ever. Ray sat beside her, his voice calm. "You have a new beginning now." She leaned her head against his arm, her voice soft. "And I am not alone anymore." He smiled, his eyes on the stars ahead. "No, never again." The ship moved forward into the endless night, not into darkness, but into possibility. For the first time, Arya felt the weight of the past lift away. She had cried, she had suffered, she had been abandoned. But she had also found hope, and on her first true birthday, she had been given the greatest gift of all, a new beginning.